Coming up, a bonus video this week as I wanted to cover the latest Brexit meets reality car crash, with Rishi Sunak announcing his government's latest Brexit climbdown this week. This was concerning the new world-beating UK safety standard, UKCA, which is just the latest in a long line of so-called Brexit benefits that actually turned out to be unrealistic, impractical and damaging. Stay tuned. I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button, subscribe, and above all, share a link to this video with your social media contacts. A few short weeks ago, we had the inevitable announcement that the much-trumpeted Brexit bonfire of EU laws was now on hold. This followed pressure from economists, lawyers and British businesses, who all unanimously impressed on the government the full scale of the damage and costs that this ludicrous proposal from the swivel-eyed Brexit lunatics in the Sunak cabinet would entail. Now, British businesses have given Sunak another good smack round the head, and his government announced this week that UK industry will be allowed to continue to use the European Union safety mark indefinitely. Another humiliating climb down from this Brexitist government's previous post-Brexit willy-waving. Going back to 2020, the government pledged to introduce a competitor assurance mark to the EU's CE, Conformité Européenne. But the planned mandatory introduction of the so-called UKCA mark has since been delayed time and time again. It was meant to replace the European CE mark on all goods sold in Great Britain by December 2024. But like so much else with Brexit, when the hype met reality, reality came off best, as businesses explained to this economically illiterate government the full extent to which preparing for the mandatory new British standard would add to costs of goods and would then feed through into price inflation. The point is that any UK company exporting to the EU, or indeed many other markets across the world, would still have to comply with CE standards and regulations, meaning that for them, the UKCA accreditation is just doubling up their costs of conformity, whilst adding no value whatsoever, besides embellishing this government's aspirations for British exceptionalism. Oh, and this will no doubt give the few remaining die-hard Brexitists yet more evidence in their twisted worldview that, quote, Brexit hasn't happened yet. Or to quote a comment left on this channel from a member of Idiot's Corner earlier this week, we never got Brexit. We were robbed of that pleasure by our disingenuous politicians. The self-deception that the Brexitist brain is capable of, just to avoid confronting the fact that the Brexit they voted for has been a disaster, is a thing of wonder. Seems these people have never heard of the withdrawal agreement, let alone that it actually came into effect on the 1st of February 2020, but never let the facts get in the way of a good conspiracy theory. And I can personally assure you that we did get Brexit, as my company lost all its European business overnight the day we withdrew from the EU. And every single one of us with only a UK passport lost our right to live, work and retire in the 27 countries now making up the EU at a stroke. The economy has taken a 4% hit, trade intensity is down 17%, we're no longer members of Horizon or Erasmus, and the UK is a global laughingstock. Brexit happened all right, but fortunately the ludicrous UKCA won't. At least not in a mandatory sense. The government eventually faced up to the real world and announced that UK firms will now be free to use either the UKCA or the CE mark when selling goods in the UK. So, British industry has a great choice here. Conform to the standard that gives access to markets in the UK, in Europe and throughout the world, or go for the one that's recognised only in the UK.
Oh!
Business Minister Kevin Hollinrake said, by extending CE marking use across the UK, firms can focus their time and money on creating jobs and growing the economy. In other words, just like before Brexit, except now with all those non-tariff barriers that Brexit erected between the UK and its biggest trading partner. William Bain, head of trade policy at the British Chambers of Commerce, said businesses will breathe a sigh of relief that the government has decided to take a pragmatic approach. Much as businesses breathed a sigh of relief when the government shelved plans for the Brexit bonfire of European legislation, and much as the majority of us will breathe a sigh of relief once we remove this destructive and dangerous Tory Brexit government from power for good.